Catching up with the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference and Greg Sankey. Appreciate you joining us, sir.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thanks for being part of Digital Drive, as we call it now.
You dive into SEC Digital Drive and Media Days and this event. Talk about what this event really means in the grand scheme of things of what the SEC is doing, because a lot of people say it's kind of the last benchmark of an offseason coming to an end.
Yeah, and I view it as the start, right? So when we hit the College World Series, that's kind of the end of the year. You get a week and a half, 2.5 weeks, something like that, and then you're back here. And this, to me, strikes me as the start, the hope, the optimism, the grand predictions for the year ahead. Everybody's undefeated. And so I think that's one. It's a starting point, and then it's a connection point too. So the opportunity to have different media outlets from different places all across our footprint meet personally with whether it's myself or players or coaches or others around bowl games or other members of our staff, I think that's pretty unique and an important element of that kickoff to what's ahead for the 2025 football season.
Something that we've kind of sat in on and listened to coaches during their opening speeches and stuff like that. And we've heard just about all of them talking about the NIL salary cap, all that kind of stuff that comes along with it. And, the consistency is what they've asked for, is the transparency and consistency just from the upper echelon of people that are making those decisions. Do you feel like we're kind of moving in that direction of trying to be the consistent and being transparent across the league?
There are two elements that have come up most frequently. The word guardrails is the one that for years was identified. We need guardrails for NIL. We need guardrails for this activity. So we have guardrails. Some of those are still in development because of the timing of the settlement approval and the terms of the settlement that require interaction with plaintiffs' attorneys. But we'll work through those as rapidly as we can. And then to the extent we can provide transparency and do that legally and do it in a legally defensible way, we want to seek that opportunity and agree with meeting that expectation of coaches. And I think part of what has to be understood is there's a lot out on social media, and the ability to be transparent in real time with social media, that won't be reality, but understanding what's really happening eventually, yes, I think we can move towards that.
How much has this day and age where everybody is an expert, they think, on social media and everything that they put out just goes out instantaneously, how much more difficult has it made this transition of what college football and college athletics is doing?
I'd add a couple things. So I used a phrase that I've used in meetings, sudden experts or sudden expertism. Somebody's put in a position and all of a sudden they're an expert. Now, they may be really great at oil and gas. They may be really great at executive search work, but that doesn't mean they're an expert on the intricacies of college sports and the relationships of different issues in college sports. And so you walk in unfettered and you suggest, hey, if we would just do this, we'd solve these problems. Whenever anyone says to me, if we would just do this, I think that they're suggesting a simple solution for a complex problem. The reaction to social media is real. Something's there, and if it's like said about me, and I'm using me generally, everybody knows that's not real. But if it's said about them, well, that's absolutely right. Particularly if it's thinking the worst, and that's like an added duty is to take that incoming. But whatever it is, you have to filter it through a lens of reality.
So just coming off of what was a really good season for the SEC football-wise, and looking back a couple years ago, I guess when it was announced that Texas and Oklahoma was going to be joining the SEC, looking back from then into now, after they just finished their first season, how would you say, did it go as smoothly as we had kind of hoped for the last couple years, like leading into it, now that they've got a season under their belts?
I think so. We had a very long runway from 2021 to entry in 2024 to prepare. We brought campus leaders, athletics directors, presidents, and chancellors, and then coaches into our meetings. We obviously had interaction during regular season and postseason with both programs anyway, so the familiarity was there. And some of their coaches had been coaches in our league. Oklahoma soccer coach was at Ole Miss. Sark was at Alabama with Nick for a while, so it's not as if we didn't have a level of knowledge. Going new places, I think, has been exciting, whether you're at Oklahoma or Texas, going to our pre-existing 14 members or part of the 14 going to either Austin or Norman. Both are bringing high-level programs consistent with our other high-level programs. I think that makes everyone better and have been good participants in our conversation. And what's nice is we're now to this point where, yep, we're a 16-team league. We've been through this before, and we're just going to do it again. And I think that's when you can really start to make improvement as an organization.
One of the things that I love about the SEC and specifically with you is there's a lot of conference commissioners across the country that are just kind of the figurehead that want to be in the office and be that kind of title. You're very different from that. You're out in these schools, you're out in these communities, being able to be in front of a lot of different people. Why has that been so important for you in your tenure here at the SEC?
Just really speaking from my perspective, this work is based on relationships. And even though we're much better at video conferencing than we were 5 years ago, I don't think you build relationships through screens. You build relationships through time and through presence. And I'm reminded of that over and over in interaction. And there are times like in January, I needed to be out on all 16 campuses, spending time with each of our presidents and chancellors. And when you do that, 16 times, that's like 2 straight weeks every day, someplace different. And actually, I had a week where I think I was in 10 different cities in 6 days for those meetings. And that takes a toll. You're not able to do a lot more, but I think that's the emphasis on relationships. And that's part of trying to be in communities. And you can't, it's difficult to do as much in the spring as maybe going to football games in the fall because there's a rhythm. And football games don't allow you to deal with big policy issues, but you get to see a lot of people. And in the spring, from like mid-February until the end of June, the pace of our work, meetings, events, championships, the number of sports playing just zooms by. So you don't have as much opportunity to be out and be visible, except around those SEC or NCAA championship things.
And I'd imagine those relationships are so much more important whenever you get to the changing times in college athletics that you've had the last couple of years.
It is. And I think that's part of building trust as well. When we talk about some of the things that come out, you can then respond and say, hey, okay, you know who I am. Let's wait a second. Let's take a step back and talk through the issue.
And again, talking about some different things and some new things that have happened last season and still leading into this season. What was the process like last year when making the move to kind of get rid of divisions, get rid of the SEC West and the SEC East, and kind of just combining it? What was that process like?
Moving away from divisions is a conversation that began in 2018. Ironically, we were bringing a proposal to eliminate divisions as a 14-team conference to the March 2020 presidents and chancellors meeting. Our athletics directors had seen the information, no direction had been set. We were bringing the model for presentation to our presidents and chancellors on literally the week that we shut down because of COVID. So all of that work went on the shelf as we worked through COVID. When you came back to 2021, suddenly the Oklahoma and Texas opportunity was real, and the moving away from divisions became part of the growth to 16. There were 2 really important terms used, and we went through 6 months of conversation with athletics directors, like what should our priorities for scheduling be? And the words fairness and balance were continually identified. And so the fairness issue is about narrowing the bandwidth. So ideally, everyone's schedule in the conference, their opponent's win-loss percentage would be 500. That means everybody was playing a consistent schedule. Well, that's impossible. In divisions, you had a pretty broad, like a 20% variance based on East and West and the more competitive of the divisions. With the single division, you can narrow that to about 8% variance. Now, once a season starts, particularly in the volatility of the transfer portal, you can't control the competitive aspects there, but you can look back over time and try to build a competitive schedule. So that was the fairness issue. And then balance was everybody seeing everybody with a level of equal frequency. And that's what informed the decision to move away from divisions. First year worked well. We really not had a conversation about going away from that. Every so often it'll pop up, but it's not been a substantive agenda item.
finally, before we let you go, I know you've got a lot more to get to this afternoon, but when you look at the college football playoff and the changes that were made, you've been heavily involved with the college football playoff since its inception. And one thing that you said just before the SEC championship game last year was there are going to be changes as we evolve into this new college football playoff format. And the fact that the schedule and the timeline was very much elevated or quickened whenever you got to this 12-team format. How much have you and the rest of the staff learned of what this can be going forward?
I think a lot of the learning on campus about how you manage late in the year, I'd put that at the top of the list, and that's from talking with coaches during the playoff. So I saw Georgia play, I saw Texas play. I did not make it to Columbus for Tennessee's game, but reducing the level of contact, taking a longer view, that was part of the learning there. For us, we had identified, and I'd been a part of a group that identified issues that needed to be addressed, one of which was kind of this seeding based on putting teams into places. So Arizona State being bumped into a bye despite, I think, their 8 or 9 ranking, Boise being the same. That was a good idea in 2020 when the Pac-12 existed, as it were, and became less of a good idea when all of the conference movement took place. So one of the adjustments from the learning is to simply seed based upon rankings. One of the issues we have is where do you place games at that time of year? So you want people to have time to prepare. You also want a level of clarity on who your opponents will be. You don't want to have to prepare for 12 different teams based on reseeding. So we'll continue to monitor those issues and other aspects of how we manage it. I think one of the learning experiences, we tried to sanitize as a CFP entity the home games. And really, the football traditions are important. And this is not like an NCAA basketball tournament game in a neutral site. This is a home game, and we should accept that and allow fireworks to go off and music to be played appropriately, not interfering with play, but the celebrations to occur consistent with traditions around college football.
Commissioner of the SEC, Greg Sankey. Mr. Commissioner, appreciate your time. I know it's a busy week for you, but appreciate you stopping by.
Yep, thanks for being here. Appreciate the conversation.